how well versed are you with the topic for today's episode of the Hyper-Realists?
I have just found out about it, but I don't need to be informed because the just the premise alone is dumb enough.
Oh, jeez. Well, okay. Well, the premise is dumb. That's our decision. Goodbye, everybody. But yeah.
If
Good night.
if you have people within the creepypasta community calling out other people and saying, "Yeah, this kind of seems dumb and shady," then it's got to be dumb and shady.
Now, I haven't seen. I've seen people calling it out, saying it doesn't seem very. I guess we should. Is everybody recording now? That is
Yes.
recording. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
yeah.
We're all recording. Okay. All three of us are recording. We're gonna. I
Not
guess
not me.
all three of us are recording, and we're gonna play all of them. Sort of at once in the final edit, but a little bit off, so it'll be like a big
Yeah.
echoing mess. But yeah. So yeah, I guess we should explain what HorrorTube is. Now, would you like to have that honor, Abysme, since it?
Sure. HorrorTube is a attempt to make a competitor to YouTube that focuses solely on horror content, and
Okay,
that's
so
the
do we
only
need to
hard
explain why this is a bad
explanation.
idea?
Well, there's a lot of reasons why it's a bad idea. I just want to say at the outset that I respect the want of a competitor to YouTube,
Right.
and I'm sure there's lots of horror creators, not just narrators, who are feeling the sting of demonetization and not really fitting in YouTube's new vision for their content. However, it's a very, very, very monumental task to be a competitor to YouTube. People have tried and failed. Yeah, if everyone remembers what happened to VidMe just a few months ago.
Yeah, that was surprising because VidMe was like, we don't need any, we don't need to be like YouTube. We don't have to do anything like they do. We don't need any input on what okay, we're done. We're closed.
And that's the thing is if VidMe for some reason had just as much money as YouTube, they would have been more successful.
Well, yeah.
Like uh because their strategy if they were as big as YouTube was better. However, that wasn't the case. You cannot make a YouTube competitor without insane governmental amounts of capital. And I'm not saying that that's a good idea, or saying like the government should sponsor that or something like that. I'm saying you need, you know, more money than there is in, all of South Africa
Right.
together. To,
Basically, yeah. But
Yeah, you need multiple venture capitalists to say, yeah, you're going to make a gigantic website that will, even if it's a fraction of the size of YouTube, just to host a video sharing platform with search functions and accounts, and just it's mind-numbingly complex.
and I think that it's important to stress that HorrorTube, as it's been dubbed, basically is right now a Patreon um, campaign to create HorrorTube, a YouTube competitor or alternative, I guess. Not really, maybe a competitor
I
um,
guess.
for
it's
horror
yeah,
content.
yeah, and it's being made by YouTube narrator types, and they are going to inevitably post their videos on YouTube as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So
And
you're
I
not
think
going to
it's
start.
you
You're
know
not going to starve YouTube.
it's not necessarily um, a problem other than what we've talked about with needing a lot of capital and a lot of business acumen and different things like that to get something like this off the ground. I mean, it may be worth noting that we're talking about narrators with under 4,000 subscribers, under 3,000, and under 1,000.
Yeah.
And it's not. I hate to. I really hate that douchebaggy kind of. Oh, you have less subscribers or you have more subscribers. But I mean, we're talking about who these people will be reaching to fund it. That's a
Yeah.
small group of people they can reach to fund something that needs a lot of time and money.
That would be,
And
I mean, it's not really that weird. It would be like me saying like, yeah, me and my two Jack and buddies are just going to defeat YouTube. No,
Oh man.
foolish.
And
I
I
think
feel
one of the
like oh, go ahead.
issues, just like I've seen some posts by the creator saying, no, we don't just want to recycle the narrations and stuff. We want to put exclusive content on there. We want to attract like short films and art and all horror stuff, which other than being also very difficult, how are you going to get everyone on board
Mm.
with that when like even like YouTube doesn't work for them? Why would HorrorTube? What's your game plan? And that's the issue, is that this site, the Patreon for it, has so little information, and it's just a lot of it's up in the air, and there's no like proof of concept of, okay, what is this though? Why should we fund this?
And
Well,
And I don't
a
think that's
major
because it's
okay.
malicious. It's just like
Right.
not there.
A major problem with it is, hey, are you not making any money on YouTube? Come on over to HorrorTube where we have no methods to pay you. You know, like we're not going to have an ad service. We're not going to have millions of hits. You know, like
Yeah.
okay. I mean, it's great. I personally have started and will probably continue to start a bunch of failed sites for community-driven stuff or hosting content, different things like that. I think that I would be much more on board with this, and basically I would have nothing to say about this project if it was just like me and some friends want to start a site for our videos where we can upload them.
Yeah.
Then I'd be like, yeah, that sounds like something I'd do. And, I would hope it grew someday. But, basically it's being presented as, HorrorTube will be the alternative to YouTube where you can upload things without worries of censorship. And it's like, no. 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 But
It's also being set up through a Patreon, which is baffling that it's not a GoFundMe or a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo.
right.
Hmm.
It's a Patreon, and
That is, yeah,
and they're
that's absolutely bizarre.
yeah, and they've set it up to where they have goals that are like, hey, we need $2,500, but this isn't a monthly thing. This is a lump sum, and it's like, okay, well, it's not going to tick up that way. The site doesn't work this way. It seems like the purpose of this is we want the mindset is we want to make a YouTube competitor where there is no Mr. Creepypasta, so we can be the first ones to be the YouTube narrators and get on the ground floor of this site.
Maybe.
Possibly.
Another really
The answer
big
is
issue.
yes.
Another really big issue is that just we're going back to the uncertainty. It says the goal is $2,500. It's a lump sum, and then when that happens, I'll close this down. I will adjust the goal when we have a legitimate quote. Form a web designer and programmer. So what if that 2,500, which is not going to be enough if you want a video hosting website that's like big and complex? So then are you just going to like reopen this and say, sorry, we need more money? How are you going to
Yes.
retain anybody? Like I would not put my money there. If one of you guys made this and phrased it like this, I would not give you my money because I'd say
Right.
that's open ended.
I mean,
I need something more concrete.
I pretty much, first of all, it's, as somebody who has done web design and, all this stupid crap with different varying results of success, I can say that it's baffling that there is no idea of having, no idea of how much it will cost to have a website made, and no idea of who's doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, once we have a quote from somebody, like, you don't have that already, you should have that before you start asking for money. Now, I don't want to come down too hard on these people, because I think it's just, some people who have a project idea, I don't think it's, like, malicious, so I don't want to be too hard on them, but it's like, you gotta have a little bit of foresight there to know that you need to know what you're doing and how much it costs before you, start trying to get people's money for it.
Yeah,
think
I don't
that
sense any maliciousness here. I think it's just a lot of inexperience and naivete.
Right.
That's but it's hard to ignore that, and hopefully they're open to this criticism, and this is going to fail from the beginning.
And the reason I think it is important to discuss as opposed to just leaving it lie is that, people are paying into this.
Mhm.
yes,
And that's why it's an
but
important topic. So.
I don't think it's entirely innocent. Of course, you always want to assume that there is that what you can ascribe to malice is actually just idiocy. But I think that there is a little bit of maliciousness here in that they're being iffy with how they're collecting the money. And the bigger issue to me is they really are just like, man, YouTube is not growing people who have creepypasta in their name anymore because those people got in on the ground floor of the SEO whoring, and that's how it always works. Is the biggest name people in any specific thing always have like a really generic name. That's just how these things end up going. I think they're trying to get it in on the ground floor of creepypasta narration, and I think that has a level of ugly egotism to it, and that is kind of the thing that got me about this.
You could be absolutely true. I just don't see it because this is
I'm
so
real.
inept.
I'm real, and I'm for true.
It's just, but it's so inept, and it's clear that this is a. I saw this in a different video that was talking about this. This is not the original Patreon. This is a repurposed Patreon from one of the narrators' like regular channels. So it feels like they've done this because it was already like the framework was there, and they just had to change some text around.
I was gonna say when we were talking about why is it on Patreon, I was gonna say probably because all of the narrators have existing Patreons and they know how to use it.
Yeah. If you look at some of the like this, it's been updated since then, but when this first got launched, I was looking at it, and some of the reward tiers are clearly from the older, the original channel Patreon. So it's fairly transparent in that this is just easier, even if it's not going to work. And it's I mean, I've never set one up. Is it that hard to set up a Kickstarter?
No, I mean the hardest part. I actually have a couple that I never launched, but the hardest part of it was getting Kickstarter to agree that I was someone of note to have a campaign, because they actually research who you are and look into what links you provide about what you can do and what you can attain. So,
right.
At least that when I signed up, maybe it's different now. I don't know. But they at first they rejected it, and I sent a letter back, and I was like, you realize for what I'm asking for this project, I actually have X, Y, and Z that I've done, that people have read and blah blah blah. And they were like, "Oh, sorry," and they approved it. I don't know. Just that was the only difficult part. But I just wanted to touch on one thing because we talked about the fee here, and if they don't have a quote from a web designer, what is this fee? Like what is it for? And I'll tell you what it's for, which is most likely to buy HorrorTube.com, the domain name. Because the domain name's taken, and it's parked with a thing where you can fill out a form to ask them for a quote on how much they would sell it for. And if $2,500 isn't for setting up the site, the only other thing I can think of that you would need it for is a domain name, and that $2,500 probably sounds about right for like a low-level domain name being sold by a professional company, because they usually, if you're buying even the worst domain name, they'll say, well, we want $2,000 for it, So
they don't have a domain name, they don't have a site built, they don't have a site plan as far as we know, and they don't have a very good description as to what their concept is. How on earth do they think they're going to get this funding?
Well, I mean, they're getting it. I mean, it's not. If people keep up the $50 a month that it's getting now, if people keep that up long enough, they'll have the $2,500.
It's going to take 47 months, roughly. And that's assuming someone doesn't buy the domain name in that time, then the price goes up. So again, that's
here's the domain name that I want. Nobody steal it.
Well, I mean, when I ran a
got
I ran a GoFundMe to try to set up a site. Actually, Too Spooky. I ran a
Mhm.
GoFundMe to get the toospooky.com domain name because I talked the seller down to $900. And I was
Damn.
like, started the GoFundMe and I said, if anybody is interested in doing this, this is, what it's for. I would be buying the domain with this and then setting up, a forum on the site for a community site.
Mhm.
And I think I had a couple supporters, but one who was very supportive, named Emmy, I should probably shout her out, who paid almost for the entire freaking thing. So, I
Oh
mean,
wow.
yeah, I think, I think that not telling people what the domain was beforehand was very helpful because I don't want to be like, I need to buy toospooky.com. I talked to the buyer down to this price I'm asking, and then someone else would just be like, oh, okay, that's
I'll just
pretty good.
swoop in right now. Yeah.
Yeah, but so that's another kind of question I have about this campaign, but because I mean, HorrorTube isn't that bad a domain name. I mean, it's not great, but it's solid.
If your goal is to just lead people away from YouTube
Yeah,
and just be the horror section of YouTube with less constraints, yeah, it makes sense. Because you can't, if anyone wants to compete with YouTube, you're going to have to specialize, I think, a little bit. You can't just be another YouTube. Like, no
right.
one, it's just too difficult. They're too big. So I get why it's called that. And yeah, the name isn't wonderful. I just don't know how they're going to attract creators to do this. Like, how are
Right.
you going to get them paid? Why would any of us here release our horror content exclusively through here? What benefit does it give?
Why would you even post it there?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
you're not going to get any benefit from that really.
no.
All the network utility is on YouTube. Uh, there's a lot of people that want to leave YouTube, and I just don't know if there's going to be a big enough push for that. Uh, they have just too much utility. You At the end of the day, if you want to center an exodus around animation and just say, we're not going to post our stuff here anymore because it's getting the shaft, and then you get a
Mhm.
bunch of animators, notable animators, to say, yeah, we're leaving, and then maybe stage some sort of protest that way and say we're coming over to this site, then maybe you can build something around a medium like animation.
Mhm.
But we're talking about a genre. uh, that seems a little foolhardy to say. It's just like, come on over here if you're narrator.
I mean,
Narration,
Filmmaker.
narration is already dying on YouTube. It
right.
just
Yeah,
it
yeah.
doesn't have the groundswell to change to move worlds.
I mean, to put it in, like, because a lot of, I know that the three of us and a lot of people who may be listening to this are fans of horror and, possibly run in the circles of creepypasta and even YouTube creepypasta content, different things like that. So, it's kind of hard to see maybe from the inside of it. So I would just give the example of picture somebody setting out to make romance tube. Where it'll all be romantic stories and fan fictions and maybe people can post their short romance films and animations about love. Like as silly as that sounds, that's
Bring
how
it
we would look
bone.
to other people in our community.
I'm gonna make Comedy Tube. All the funny Let's Players come over. It's gonna be Comedy Tube.
uh,
Comedy Tube is a thing. It's called Funny or Die. No one goes to it.
Well,
Funny
Animator
or Die
Tube is a
just
thing. It's
died.
called Newgrounds, and that one doesn't. People go to Newgrounds, but not like they used to.
mm,
No. And then everything other high effort content like music, people just go to SoundCloud or whatever.
Hmm.
So because you don't
Yeah,
need the visuals there. But
yeah.
yeah, at the end of the day, you're investing in something that is doomed to fail on like a million fronts.
yeah.
Yeah. It was not thought through very well.
I mean, yeah. There appears to be no plan and yet funding. So I don't know.
You would like, unless you got Elon Musk as a friend who's gonna, set this up for you. I don't see how you're gonna attract a great amount of people to get this done anytime soon.
By the way, Simpsons once again predicted the future with Hank Scorpio and Elon Musk. But anyway,
Oh snap! Did they?
um, but yeah, I mean, the thing is, I've seen. Quickly looked through a like live stream by one of the people running this,
Yeah.
and I quickly looked through it. I didn't watch the whole thing, so it's an abridged take on it. I admit that there may be something I'm wrong about or something I missed, but I heard a lot of stuff about, or a lot of stuff that was like, well, we don't know how we're doing that yet, and we don't know what this will be like or what that'll be like, and we don't have answers for this, but what it'll be is a platform where people can, everybody can come and do their things, and it'll be this and it'll be that, but we don't know how or when or why. Like,
So it's a pipe dream.
yeah, and again, I would have no problem with that, other than the fact you've skipped right to the fundraising. I don't know,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
but and I've seen a couple things in researching this, and I don't know. I don't necessarily know if these are actually connected because I haven't dug deep into it and got into a lot of stuff I shouldn't be into and different things like that. But I've seen a couple videos and a couple tweets and different things like that where it's talking about HorrorTube and it's talking about women in horror.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed that the people running this, Duchess, Dark, Mother, Creepypasta, etc., and I've seen these tweets about support HorrorTube and women in horror, and I'm like, is that a selling point? I don't see that on the Patreon, but it seems like a lot of like maybe like a mixed salad of just a jumbled up bunch of reasons to fund it, and like it's against YouTube, and it's uncensored, and it's for you, and it's for everybody, and it's for women, and it's for like, okay.
It really is kind of just a shotgun approach of try anything that will get eyes on it, and then the money will follow. I think is the logic behind that. And I've seen a lot of tweets from one of the creators, basically very unhappy with the criticism that they've received so far on this, and the only criticism I've seen has just been essentially what we're saying here. And it's very just like, look, it's nice that you want to do this, but it's not going to work. Why is this on Patreon? You need to answer all these questions. There's so much detail missing, and they're not being very receptive to said criticism. So I even if you can somehow get the 2,500, what's going to happen when you need to deal with a web developer? What's going to happen when you don't get the creators you need? Like, if you can't accept criticism and critique now, you're going to be in real trouble down the line.
Right. I mean, I think we can pretty much answer that now speculatively, which is after they get the money, they get the domain name, if they get the money. I guess I should start over. If they don't get the money, nothing happens.
Yes.
It's just dropped. If they get the money, they get the domain name, and if they get to the domain name, it's back to Patreon to fund the web development. And back to Patreon to fund the fixes to the web development, and back to Patreon to add new features to the web development, and basically, that's what it would be.
If it's not generating a profit, then you're gonna just, you're gonna have to keep asking for money. You're basically treating every horror fan on YouTube as an independent venture capitalist who doesn't have a lot of money to build this, and it's going to look very weird after the 4th Patreon campaign. Hey, thanks for sticking with us. We just need a little bit more help.
Right.
That whole scam. I just, again, I would love for this thing to be real and successful and profitable, but to my mind, I don't know how to make what they are proposing, even if I had all the materials at my disposal. Do either of you have an idea?
Well, go ahead.
I don't think that this is necessarily a good idea. Even like if they were successful, I don't even know that I would want that. I think I would prefer to be on a platform that doesn't define itself by horror, because then well, what is horror? And then it has to be a
Mhm.
certain kind of thing, and it just becomes a really bizarre category of like, should I be allowed on the site? And then do you get flagged as like non-horror based content if
Exactly.
you're
Oh
if you're not
God.
spoopy enough? It's there's just a million pitfalls, and it's such a narrow-minded goal of I want HorrorTube. It's like, no.
Okay.
Yeah, because I
It's
mean,
it's better to
either
have
okay.
it's better to have a all-encompassing platform if it's going to be a free service like YouTube, which is what VidMe was, or Dailymotion, or any of these kinds of things. If your goal is to have a paid service where it's like pay $10 a month and then you get the WWE Network, okay, well then that makes sense, because if you watch wrestling, then you probably watch a lot of wrestling, and then they're going to give you basically your entertainment for the week for $10 a month. Okay, you can subscribe to that. If you're into anime, you can get Crunchyroll. Go subscribe to Crunchyroll,
Crunchyroll.
and then you essentially get a bunch of animes in the format that you want, at the quality that you want, for like $10 a month or something. Like, go sign up, then you get what you want. That makes sense. At the end of the day, though, who wants just a bunch of plays where they have a bunch of narrations? uh,
Because
it's just not.
as
And
much
that's the
as
difficulty.
they want to court other people other than narrators, let's be honest, it'll be narrators.
Yeah, what is it? Scream Radio. I've seen that kind of pop up where it's like a 24/7 streaming thing of narrations, essentially. A lot of YouTube narrators are doing that, and there's original authors on there as well. But that's like a lot easier to set up, and B, it's very obviously these are narrations of stories, not everything under the sun. And if you're only like, if your funding base and your current staff are just all narrators, how are you going to attract other types of creators? It doesn't, they're gonna like, oh, you make films, you want to be on our thing? Well, you're all just narrators. Like, how do I know people will even watch it? Like, narration is a thing you put on in the background usually, and you're doing something else.
Mm.
I make a thing I want people to visually engage with the entire time and not just, forget about. I don't know, man.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to make a platform for horror like this, I would say it would be a better bet to just go audio, like you said,
Yeah.
the streaming service. But even just, even if you're going to fail and you're not going to be a real competitor and it's not going to work out, it still would be a better starting point to say, go to the site where people are uploading MP3s of their readings and things like that. But
Well, that's
Hey,
how.
hey, guys! You sign up for HorrorTube, and I'll ship you a box of MP3s every month of your favorite narrations that you haven't heard, except you have on YouTube. Coupon code HorrorBox.
Original
Like,
exclusive narrations of stories that you could go read on Reddit for yourself.
want the audio experience? Read it out loud.
and like, I've worked with audio dramas that get exclusive stories because they basically have a contract saying, look, write a story and there's an exclusivity period where you can't sell it anywhere else. So we'll have it like, the only place they can hear it is for a month here. We'll pay you for it. And that's how you get work.
Mm.
I don't know, again, if you don't have any money, how are you going to get exclusive content from people who
And
have
if
to
you
like
can't
pay their fucking bills?
And if you can't spell check form from, then I doubt you're going to write a contract.
Yeah.
But I think you asked something before, and I just want to touch on a couple points we passed by. First, talking about deleting something for not being horror. That's the problem that we're opening up here. Is either people are going to be uploading to HorrorTube and then coming back to find that their stuff has been deleted.
I'm gonna stop you right there. No one will be uploading to HorrorTube.
Okay, well, theoretically, let me restart that. If people were to upload to HorrorTube,
there we go.
They would either come back to find videos deleted for not being scary enough or not being horror, or because moderators didn't understand the twist, of what it was about. Or, alternately, if things aren't deleted for not being horror, you're going to bring up HorrorTube.com, theoretically, and you're going to see the #1 trending video is a young lady dressed as Pennywise lip-syncing to a Cranberry song, titled Rip Cranberry,
God.
and it'll just be, lip-syncing in cosplay. It's one or the other if it were to be a success. Either you're going to be deleting people's content for not fitting the mold, or it's going to be watered down and, ruined.
Yeah. Another HorrorTube staff creators, if you're listening, I would love to hear the answer to that question.
Well, the answer is you get deleted if you're not friends with one of the 3 founders. That's what would happen. That is the most likely outcome.
Well, I mean, yeah, I would assume if this were to come to fruition, if this were to be created, I would assume it would be, just, a group of friends with a website. And that's
who's
fine,
gonna quit
but you
their
don't...
job to run this thing and moderate and, more questions.
But I mean, and it's not difficult to set up something like this, because the most difficult thing is paying for the hosting. You can buy a domain name, you can direct it to your hosting service, and you can upload a pre-made, open source free PHP script that you found on the internet somewhere that's for a video website.
Okay, so what I'm thinking is I want to be like YouTube. I want to be like YouTube, but I want there to be blood.
Welcome to BloodTube.
Well, that'd be kind of cool if the like-dislike bar is a femur, like a femur bone, and it's broken, and so the point at where it breaks, it'll turn from green to red, and so if you have a bad video, no, it'll just be white and red. So like it'll be the whiter your bone, the more positive your video, and the more blood there is on your bone, then the worse your video.
Or a knife that if you hit too many dislikes, it sinks in to the bar and makes it bleed red.
And I think that this just highlights the fact that HorrorTube.com is no good. What they should have got was Bloodstream.com for their horror streaming service.
Bloodstream is a domain that's already taken, though.
Yeah, I mean, it would cost more than $2,500.
It's for minstrel streamers.
Say what?
It's for minstrel streamers.
Ah! We want to compete with Twitch.
Emails get sent out when it's that time of the month.
Oh God!
For the women you follow on StreamTube.
Yeah, but that sucks because you get spammed in your inbox because eventually all the women on the site get on the same cycle.
And it's clogging up your inbox.
Oh God! Oh man!
Oh, we're gonna get so much flack for this.
But yeah,
just go with the flow.
I mean, talk about a service that was made for sending treats. Like, click here to send me chocolates. No wait, pickles.
Yeah.
No wait.
Yeah.
Just pregnancy cravings, not menstrual cravings.
Don't pull at strings. If you do, something bad will happen. If we're talking about menstruation. But anyway,
it's such an old girls club. You can't get in. Everyone pulls strings for everyone else.
Now available on your pad. So this is why we need HorrorTube. This is why we need women in horror, because this is what we get otherwise, is these kind of conversations.
Yeah,
sophomoric toxic masculinity.
Ladies,
the
go out there and
toxicity
make
is
your
shocking
YouTube.
even.
Make your YouTube alternative. Have a more firm plan in place, I would say, and that goes for anybody listening. Fuck, I mean, just don't be better than this, because this prospectus is reckless.
I say, start a Patreon for Uterine Tube. There you go. But
don't try and start a YouTube competitor unless you know venture capitalists personally. Like, I don't. It's yeah, don't. Abysme's kind of like, do if, and I'm like, no, don't.
I mean, have fun with it. If you want to do a project, we learn from failure.
That's the thing, is we're doing the Fleming unit stuff, and that was a lot more challenging than we thought. But that's us having fun and wanting to make something.
Yeah.
This is if we get this site, maybe it'll work. What we're doing instead is like, let's create something and then put it on a site.
Yeah.
And those are two different strategies. This is a top-down strategy. You got to have a bottom-up strategy if you're just trying to build a community. If you're doing something top-down, you need those venture capitalists.
You gotta bottom up before you bottom out, and this is on its way to bottoming out. And even if you get VC money,
bottom up, and plug it up, and then pull the string out, and then.
God damn it.
The problem with getting venture capitalism funding is that, like, I think I heard this was speculated about Patreon, since we're talking about Patreon, their recent move to change the funding schema of who gets like charged the fee or whatever. And someone was saying, this is probably the venture capitalists that originally funded this coming, okay, you got to start making more money to make good on our loans, because this isn't going fast enough. And I don't know if that's true, but that is a worry. If you're going to have giant-ass funders, you have to basically play to them for your site's longevity. And trust me, you don't want to do that if you're trying to compete with Google, of all people.
And the sad thing is, that when you do hook up with people who have the money, a lot of times they have their own ideas, and they're not going to be, oh yeah, I have money for that. By the way, what if instead of HorrorTube, it was this? Instead of horror, it was pornography. What if like.
What if we just sold tampons to women via the internet? No one's done this yet.
Because I remember back in the day...
Hey, ladies. Is it that time of the month?
God damn it.
Subscribe to Minstrel Box. The box where we track where you are in your cycle and send you a box that time of the month, complete with pads, tampons, and any kind of assorted chocolates and pickles for your minstrel / pregnancy scares.
Hey!
Use coupon code MattPad.
When it's your time of the month, I tell you what. When it's your time of the month, a light goes on in MattPad's office, and he sits bolt upright and starts hand-packing your box with love and care.
Oh, I was just having a conversation with some of our too spooky people. Like, sometimes I feel bad about how much we rip on MattPat, and then I see one of his videos pop up on my sub feed, and I go, no, fuck that guy. We'll stop when he stops. That's
This is don't. But when you're talking about venture capitalists too, and like they have their own ideas, the reason that you're dealing with that issue is because these people are looking for a get rich quick scheme or a easy solution to a problem, which is YouTube. Has all the network utility, and it's a terrible site that keeps getting worse. And it used to get worse by the year, then it got worse by the 6 months, and now it's getting worse by the month. And they're trying to capitalize off of the frustration around YouTube and saying, like, look, we're under attack. You gotta come help us.
So,
and
DP,
you're not going to throw money at that problem and make it go away.
DP, I have to stop you right there. Are you saying that at a certain time of every month, the CEO of YouTube ruins the site a little more? Is that what you're saying, DP?
I will stand by this. Watch me stand by this. They'll be outside my house with signs and guns, and I'll be like, nope. I was right. You're wrong.
No, I'm gonna have to stop you right there.
I'm right.
No one is going to picket on behalf of Susan Wojcicki. It's not gonna happen. No one's doing that. Her own fucking employees probably wouldn't do that.
Oh no, Mama. They would if they want to keep their jobs.
I think
Quick, go to Chillicothe. Stand outside this guy's door. Your
we're gonna
job
put
depends on it.
his address will be in the description below.
Yeah, where I live in Chillicothe.
But yeah, I think basically, I guess we're winding down probably. The thing is, I think
Yeah.
that
Much like HorrorTube's Patreon money.
oh, Jesus Christ. I think that what we have here, for better or worse, for good or bad, I think what's happened is there was Patreon money for doing creepypasta narrations, and YouTube money for doing creepypasta narrations. I think that got oversaturated and dried up. So people moved on to 10 true stories, 5 stories about this, 8 stories about that, which I see on these channels.
10 stories about Anna and Elsa.
Yeah, exactly.
Fucking Spider-Man.
So I
Pregnant
think
Spider-Man.
Strap on.
I think that
While he's on his period.
God damn it! Fucking shit. I think that dried up. The 10 true horror stories dried up on YouTube, and I think so now.
It dried up, turned a rusty brown.
Fucking shit. I think what happened is now the money is in trying to fight YouTube, and I think that's the progression.
Okay. One final just sig burn. I have about twice as many Twitter followers as HorrorTube does.
So what you're saying
all I do is shitpost play of the games with Reaper. Like,
That's why you have more followers.
and it's true.
well, I mean, if you want to get on HorrorTube's level, you need to tweet more about Trump, so
Of course.
or retweet. But
That gets all the views.
I think that what we are hearing here is that we shall soon see a Patreon for DeadTube. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Dead Pallets
Where it's-
channel?
Where it's just a bunch of dead bodies.
Just pictures of cemeteries.
No, it's streams of morgues and them like doing investigations on dead bodies.
Autopsies.
Jeez.
Yeah.
I think that sounds
I don't
a
think
bit too much
I
like
don't-
these channels, though. But
I don't think the next trend is trying to fight YouTube with money. I do want to see what the next trend is, because I've seen narrators basically go on Twitter going, hey, I'm going to try live streaming and have you call in and tell me your stories, and then I'll talk to you. And like that didn't work either. So I think we may just see the death of, at least for most channels like that aren't enormous and aren't doing other things, we're going to probably see the death of narrations for the most part. It's going to go small, underground. Thank God.
no.
No. It's
Oh.
interesting.
You know,
This
I
is an
don't.
act
I
of
don't want to.
desperation.
Yes, oh, very much so. It's an act of desperation. I don't want to, doom myself of like, oh, here's this thing that I'm doing, and I think it's going to be successful, but now it won't. I think analyzing stories is where it's going to be at, because that is actually performing a service, a real service, not one that could be done by a computer, of saying, here's what I like about these stories, and here's what I don't like about these kinds of stories, and really digging into stuff. That requires your own thoughts. It requires you to use your own brain. It can be controversial because people can disagree. It builds a sense of community, and this narration thing from the outset has always it has always been about people who hate each other acting like they love each other. That way, nepotism.
I think that
meanwhile, Undercooked Analysis is people who act like they hate each other but really love each other.
Except for this podcast, we all really hate each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. That's why one of our possible titles was Mean Ghouls. Remember that?
That was a good possible title, but we made the right decision.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did. Or the voters made the right decision.
Well, we made the decision to listen to the voters. We could have just ignored them,
True.
told them to go fuck
I don't
themselves.
think
It's the thing where it's like, what do I want? And then like you're in a grocery store and you see two things that you want, and you pick up the one that you think, and then you're like, no, I made the decision in my mind, and that made the decision for me.
Hmm.
You ever do that?
No.
Sometimes. Sometimes.
It's like, do I want this sweetened tea or this unsweetened tea? And then you pick up the unsweetened bottle, and you're like, what are you doing?
Stop lying to yourself.
Yeah. I don't know.
I think there's only two, like, if I could just say this really quickly, there's only like kind of two directions. I think that DP's correct
There's
in that
only
analysis.
one direction.
There's only the one direction. There's analysis which isn't exploding by any means, but I'm definitely seeing more podcasts crop up, which I think is great. And also, if you're like the No Sleep podcast or these other ones that are like the audio dramas essentially that are actively going out, curating stories, making very high level productions, having a website and getting on iTunes, and just like it's kind of like multi-pronged attack of how to get your stuff out there, as opposed to just being like, I need to put videos on YouTube and make money from it. And if not, I'm just going to make a different YouTube and get money from it. Like, it's just not going to work.
I don't know. I mean, I hope that the future is in analyzing creepypasta and horror fiction in general and providing that service. But I mean, like, I'm looking at the views on bad creepypasta, and boy, are they in the shit can. I don't know.
Well,
I don't know.
That might just be because of them. So.
I think that has a lot to do with the fact that people are kind of numb to their shtick.
Yeah.
I bet that it has to do with, like, they're numb to their shtick, and they don't actually say anything. Like, they're not putting in their own thoughts, really.
Well, I don't know. I think that it's a difficult thing because I don't want, and of course I'm just just picking at them to be funny, but I hope that it doesn't become oversaturated like every other fucking thing where
I don't think it will.
I'm just picturing.
No, I disagree. I think it has to. Like, these things always become oversaturated if they're successful, and I don't know that analysis of creepy stories is going to hit that fever pitch, but
yeah,
there will always be imitators.
I just hope it
will
doesn't
always get obnoxious. Pickle Rick.
Oh God. Okay. Let me explain Pickle Rick to all the people with low IQs who don't understand it. All right, so does anybody want to do their outros, their outroductions, as we call them?
I'm not wearing underwear.
That's not an outroduction, but
that's a feature, not a bug.
Alphabetical order. Alphabetical order. Dead Palette first.
Okay. I'm not wearing underwear.
Okay. Abysme.
If you want to hear me, if you want to hear me complain about other things, you can go check out Raw Dog Readings, where we rip off Undercooked Analysis.
Don't they all wear underwear?
We do, but that was my rule. So yeah, I take responsibility for that. I also have a sci-fi podcast called Ray Gun Readers that I do with Paprika, and we just released our review of Subnautica, which is one of my favorite games to come out in the last probably 10 years. So that took a lot of fun research and game footage. You should go check it out. And I'm making music on the Abysme YouTube channel if you ever want to do that or commission me for a podcast intro or something like that.
Hey.
So yeah.
And I am Slime Beast, aka Tormental. I have a new podcast out called Underwear Analysis, where people send in photographs of their underwear, and we try to determine what the fuck is wrong with them biologically, just from visual cues.
The show is all about yiffing and sniffing.
Yep.